Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Tuesday to you. Hopefully you're enjoying this beautiful weather that we're having here. At least beautiful by South Louisiana standards. Temperatures in the low 90s and heat index values under 100 degrees, which is such a nice change from what we usually see during the month of August here in South Louisiana. So we'll continue to see some of that drier air settling in here for a couple of days. Then we'll get back to summer-like weather. So just like hurricane season seems to be taking a little bit more of a break again. So is the heat of the summertime. So let's keep it that way. As far as our current temperatures, we are holding at 90 degrees right now, and the heat index only 94. Besides yesterday, I can't remember too many days where we've started this broadcast where our heat index was under 100 degrees. Those dew points have dropped into the upper 60s, and we've got a nice north breeze at about 10 miles per hour. Again, hoping that this is going to last for quite some time. Looking outside, we've got mostly sunny skies, barely a cloud in the sky thanks to all of that dry air. And that dry air is going to be sticking around. So a beautiful day today, and with that dry air in place, we might be able to push into the low to mid 70s later on tonight. Check it out. We don't have any rain on land, but where the proximity of our cold front is out in the offshore waters, we're still seeing at least a few widely scattered showers. Generally, those are pushing away from shore, so not expecting a whole lot of rain on land this time around. And it really is a pretty nice day out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Our frontal boundary is kind of well offshore here, but then it kind of drifts back off toward the northwest. So our friends over in southeast Texas are not getting the taste of the drier air, so the heat index values are quite high, and even western portions of Cameron Parish are still under a heat advisory for the remainder of the day. For those of you who might have these last-minute plans at noontime here to maybe get offshore and do a little fishing or boating, or if you're out there working today, not too bad of a day except for where those couple of isolated thunderstorms are. Our winds have generally been out of the north today at about 5 to 10 knots with some gusts up to 15. And the seas have been running about 1 to 3 feet, and we'll probably see 1 to 3, 2 to 4 for the remainder of the day. So the Gulf of Mexico, nice and quiet. Over in Central America, we still have a tropical wave that's working across the Central American peninsula there, and that's bringing some scattered showers and some rain to Costa Rica, Panama, southern portions of Nicaragua, and we've also seen some rain move over parts of Belize and Guatemala, and that will stretch over into Mexico. As far as the Caribbean satellite, really not much going on there either. Very, very quiet day with the exception of some thunderstorms along the Panamanian coast. Cuba, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, the islands, really having a very nice day. Even the Bahamas too, with a few scattered showers along that front over the northern parts of the Bahamas. Looking farther out to the tropical Atlantic again, most of our waves are kind of fizzling out there. There just isn't a whole lot to talk about. A bit of a tropical wave here, and looks like something about ready to work its way off the African continent, but there's a significant amount of dust once again here coming off the African coast. So at least for the next few days, I'm not expecting any chances for any tropical development. And there's a real quick look at the eastern satellite. This is about as clear as it gets for the end of August. Usually you have several tropical waves that will at least be rolling off the African continent, and usually a tropical wave or maybe even a disturbance to look at. But this time we're pretty much void of anything out there. The only thing that's hanging on is post-tropical cyclone Ernesto. The National Hurricane Center putting its last advisory out on it as it's now lost its tropical characteristics, but There on the left-hand side of your screen is the final advisory, 49 degrees north, 44.7 west, and it's rapidly moving off to the northeast at about 35 miles per hour. Winds have dropped to 70 and the pressure at 987. This is still going to be a pretty significant low pressure area as it moves across the northern part of the Atlantic. It won't be a tropical system once it reaches the British Isles, but I do expect a pretty good wind maker once it gets there. So that might be something you'll see in the world news here coming up maybe late this week and into the weekend. So let's just kind of go ahead and go through the model suite again as we kind of do. We're just going to look out at the next 10 days of the GFS model, and other than a lot of moisture that's off the Gulf Coast, eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico where we've got our frontal boundary, really not seeing any development here, maybe a bit of some lowering of pressures, but really not anything that I see that would become a tropical system. And then you got a couple of tropical waves that are noted here over the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean, but the GFS, at least over the next 10 days, doesn't seem too impressed with what we're looking at. There is a little bit of a hint that there could be some tropical weather in the near future, taking this out to Labor Day. Labor Day is one of those weekends where it seems like we've always got something threatening either the Atlantic coast or the Gulf of Mexico, but at least according to the GFS, which is one of the few models that will go out this far, really the only thing we're seeing is something maybe here near the northern part of the Leeward Islands and maybe a couple of more tropical waves out over portions of the Atlantic, which would be a typical pattern we would see during the early part of September. Ridge of high pressure out here in the middle part of the Atlantic. I think if we've got anything developing here and you've got your ridge right here, there's a better chance that this is going to be staying offshore and wouldn't affect the U.S. and probably wouldn't affect the Caribbean nor the Gulf of Mexico either. So even looking out farther out than we normally would beyond 10 days, the GFS model is at least suggesting a few more tropical waves starting to make their way across. As far as the Euro model, again, we are still watching where our cold front is here, draped over Florida and the eastern part of the Gulf. Again, the Euro model isn't really showing a whole lot, just a little extra moisture maybe over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. It also has a low pressure area developing about 8 or 9 days down the road, so that would be par for the course for most of the models trying to develop something over the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. Canadian model really isn't showing anything at all. This is the model that usually tends to pinpoint tropical waves and get them into tropical depressions or tropical storms, but right now there's maybe one little blip out in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean, and there briefly is a bit of a low pressure area here over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, but the model just doesn't want to develop anything too impressive there over parts of the tropical Atlantic. So let's finish off with the Icon model. The Icon only goes out 7 days, so doesn't quite go as far, but this is the one that's been a little more robust with bringing some tropical waves off the African coast, and it's also been a little more robust on keeping moisture concentrated over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico where our cold front is, and maybe a bit of a low pressure area at least trying to develop. Icon model was picking up on this late last week, still is trying to lower some pressures there, but as I've said, it doesn't look like it's anything very impressive, and with another trough coming off the North American continent, anything that's over here most likely would shoot out this way or pull inland over the Florida Panhandle if it were indeed to develop. I don't think there's a real good chance for anything developing over the southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. Even though the shear is relatively low over the waters, you've got some pretty high wind shear that's adjacent just to the north, and some of that is forecast to sink a little bit farther to the south over the next couple of days. So wind shear would kind of write off anything that would try to develop there, and also anything that would try to develop over the tropical Atlantic would probably be written off as well, because you've got some pretty decent wind shear that's out in the Atlantic and also in the middle part of the Caribbean Sea too. As As far as the water temperatures are right up there. They are above 80 degrees just about everywhere you go, and that 80-degree water goes pretty deep as well. So if there were anything to try to develop over the tropical Atlantic and it had the right atmospheric conditions, let's say less wind shear, you would have a pretty good chance for something developing out there. But there just isn't anything looking too impressive right now. Ernesto, the only game in town that's making a stage right exit there off to the north. And for the next 7 days, the National Hurricane Center is not expecting any tropical development. But we are heading toward the peak of the hurricane season. September the 10th is just around the corner. We're about halfway, 3/4 of the way through August now. So we're in that area where we see the bulk of our tropical activity. And during the month of September, pretty much the entire Atlantic basin is open for business. A lot of our tropical systems tend to stay out in the Atlantic, but occasionally you can get a frontal boundary that can develop something over the Gulf of Mexico, or occasionally you can get a tropical wave that'll work its way into the western part of the Caribbean, or maybe over toward the Bahamas that could get into the Gulf of Mexico. But right now, I think we're in pretty good shape for at least the next 7 or 8 days without anything developing out there. We'll just continue to watch it. But as far as that very busy storm season that's been forecast, even though we've only got 5 named storms under our belt for the hurricane season, that is still a bit ahead of schedule when it comes to a normal season. So we're still expecting an above normal season. Will we get the numbers that some of the experts have put out for those early season forecasts that we have? Can't say just yet, but with the number of tropical systems that have developed from the middle part of August through the end of the hurricane season over the past several years, if we get just the average number from now to the end of the hurricane season that we've had in the past 5 years, we'll still end up with 17 to 19 named storms, which is kind of on the low end of the envelope of what some of our early season forecasts were predicting. But right up in there, because 18, 19 named storms is considered a very, very busy season. Not crazy like 2005 and 2020, where we had, I think, 27 in 2005, and I'm almost positive we had 30 named storms during 2020. So not quite the extreme, but if we can get 18 or 19 named storms before the season is over, we'll definitely be within that well above normal category, which is what most of the experts were predicting ahead of the hurricane season. So don't let your guard down, because the busiest part of the season is still ahead, and make sure you get the supplies that you need now while they're in plentiful supply at the grocery stores and other stores, and you don't have to fight the big crowds to try to go get those things. So always remember, the busiest part of the hurricane season is coming, and it's not unusual to have 5 or 6 named storms under your belt by this point in time and still end up getting 13 or 14 or 15 named storms from now to the end of the hurricane season. So please do not let your guard down just yet. So I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. That's all I've got for you today. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and also turn on those notifications. That way you know when the morning forecast drops at about 7:30. It's called Acadiana Weather Today, and it drops about 7:30 each and every weekday morning. And of course, you would get the notification that Let's Talk Tropics goes live at noon each and every weekday as well. And of course, if there's any activity that's out there, especially something that would be threatening Acadiana, make sure you get your notifications on, because we would do extended coverage on Let's Talk Tropics whenever there's any hurricanes or tropical storms that would be threatening Acadiana. So I want to say hi to Norm there real quick. And it is a great Tuesday out there. As soon as this is done, I think I'm going to kick back on my back porch for a little while and just enjoy some of this lower humidity. I hope you all have a great Tuesday. I'll see you early Wednesday morning for Acadiana Weather Today at 7:30.